Good evening, friends. It's Josh Funk here. I am about to go live with my friend Alison L. Morris. We are going to chat about lots of things. It's another episode of Funk and Friends, episode 11. Done this a bunch of times already. Hi, Susan Loebner. Alison she has been in the book industry, kidlit industry, for a very, very long time. And, sorry, that made her sound like she's like 100 years old. She's been in the book industry for, several different jobs, at least that I know of. She was a bookseller, she was a blogger with Publishers Weekly, and now she works for First Book. So she will be, First Book is a nonprofit organization that I'll let Alison explain it because she'll do a little bit more justice to it. And as soon as she hops on, I will invite her to join the chat. Goes up. Hey, how's it going, Alison? Where's
Sorry
your hat?
For that hiccup. I think we did ask each other at exactly the same moment.
Yeah, this is not the first time that's happened. So Wellesley Books is on. So that's maybe a great place to start. You are a former bookseller. Was that your first job in the kidlit world, or did you start somewhere before that?
Great question. No, that was technically not my first book selling gig. I was an education and child study major in college, and I graduated having done my teaching certification, but not sure I wanted to be in a traditional classroom. And I sort of stumbled into book selling when I was doing an internship in Indianapolis. And I got my first part-time job working in a children's bookstore in Indianapolis called Kids Inc. That is the best. Shirley Mullen is the owner of the store, and I learned all sorts of incredibly valuable things under her and worked with an amazing staff of booksellers, most of whom were teachers and librarians, and took their jobs very seriously. And I found my calling and was like, this is really what I want to do. I still think of myself as an educator, and that's the lens through which I'm reading all the time. But I loved being in the bookstore and reading all of these books that I knew teachers didn't have any knowledge of yet, and then being able to put them in their hands when they came into the store and say, hey, you're doing a unit on XYZ. This book might dovetail perfectly with that. Or, oh, you've got a second grader reading at an 8th grade level. How can we help bolster their confidence, give them content that is going to feel meaningful to them, but be appropriate for their age group? And that works both ways. 8th grader reading at second grade level and vice versa. And I love trying to help them solve those challenges. And so I was at Kids Inc. And then I went from there to the Dartmouth bookstore, where I was the co-children's book buyer for a year and a half.
Oh, I used to go to vacations with my family. We would go like rent a cabin in the woods, not in a horror style way, but when I was a little kid.
You just got really creepy, Josh.
At Eastman, I think it was like a vacation resort, and there was like a big lake, but we'd always, I don't know how close, but we'd always go to the children's bookstore in Dartmouth, and or whatever it was called. And I just, as a child, like that was my like one of my favorite parts of summer vacation was going to that bookstore. Was it upstairs? Or was it multi? Yeah, okay. Because like I can sort of picture it still.
It was an epic store to start out as a buyer. It was the largest family-owned independent bookstore in New England at the time. Okay. When I was there, and they had numerous buyers. I was one of 2 children's book buyers, and we had multiple buyers of books for adults, like fiction, nonfiction, and academic books, separate from the textbook division. There were a ton of people there who were mostly career booksellers who had also been buyers for years. And so
in case people don't know, can you explain what a buyer is?
Sure. So a buyer is the person who determines what product go into the stores that you frequent. And one of the things that is very different about an independent store versus a chain is that at a chain, you have a core group of buyers who are determining what goes into all of the stores, no matter what communities they're in, with a little bit of variation. So, Barnes & Noble in their local store might have someone who's helping advise the immediate stock that is going to be of particular relevance to people in that town or community, or authors who are local, for example. But by and large, the offerings that are in that store are going to be fairly consistent with what you're going to find in other stores throughout that chain.
Yeah, with Barnes and Noble, I know I've seen sometimes the booksellers, they have like a map of the octagon, if you know what the octagon is, and like it's got a diagram of exactly what book goes in exactly what location, and you can go into any different Barnes, and I do go to lots of different Barnes and Nobles at times, and the different Barnes and Nobles will have exactly the same books in exactly the same places for the most part, because it is a and I think I've heard that the new CEO is trying to make them have a little bit more local flavor if they can.
Yeah,
give them a little more say.
He's a former indie bookseller himself, and
right,
and really helped.
But as a buyer, you do more than just pick, like you're meeting with sales reps from the different publishers and different all this, so it's a lot of like meeting. I assume you end up reading a decent amount too, but even that is probably in your own time, from what I understand, as far as booksellers go.
Yes, that is largely true. I often get the, oh my gosh, I would love to have your job. It'd be so great to read books all day.
Yeah.
And it's coming from a good place. But yeah, I don't get to read books all day. I read an inordinate amount of content in the after hours. And a lot of it is looking at spreadsheets, determining what we need to reorder, how things are doing, what books we're going to not carry now because we need to clear the space to have new titles come in. And space is a little bit nebulous when you work for an online store, which is what I do now, right, versus brick and mortar. But the concept is still similar in that you have limited space on your site. People are only going to click through so many screens before right, they're just going to bail. They're going to pick what they want and then move on. And so you can't just endlessly overload your site with content, or it becomes very challenging to browse, which is one of the complaints people have about Amazon all the time, is that Amazon is kind of tricky from a discoverability standpoint. There's a massive sea of content there. And one of the big differences between the way I buy for first book now and the way I bought when I was an independent bookseller is that I buy on a non-returnable basis, which is a whole other ballgame.
So I don't want to skip too far ahead. So you worked in Dartmouth. Did you go from there to Wellesley?
I did, yes.
Okay.
So I was at the Dartmouth bookstore for a year and a half. I had an amazing experience there, and I had sales reps who were could tell that I was like, this is what I want to do. This is my life. I am very invested in this. I want to learn all the things and get really good at this job. And one of them, Susie Albert, who was my DK rep at the time, she is still a New England rep for Penguin Random House. She
did she take over for Biff?
She did, yeah.
Okay, because I've met Susie,
like,
yeah.
we need to get you down to the city where there's more going on. I mean, I was super, I was like 2 years out of college. Most of my friends were all grad students and med students at Dartmouth, and they were all about to graduate. So it was actually a challenging place too to be sort of that young and single. And she's like, we need to get you where there's more going on, where there are more authors, and you're more connected to the publishing world. And so she saw an ad that Wellesley Booksmith, the Brookline Booksmith, was looking for a children's manager for their Wellesley store. And I was at that point already uninterested in managing the books someone else was buying. I really wanted to help grow and expand and guide the collection for that, for whatever audience I was speaking to or what store I was going into. Anyway, long story short, I wound up there as their children's book buyer, and I was there for 10 years.
Yeah, and you did a lot of things. Shelf Talker, at least I know, was kind of a big deal. You started that, right?
Yeah. So while I was at Wellesley, I was very actively involved with the New England Children's Booksellers Association and the Association of Booksellers for Children, which is the national independent booksellers aggregate of children's booksellers. And Diane Roback was my editor at PW, and she knew my writing and the types of things I like to talk about through what was then our email listserv. This is sort of like early blog days when blogs were just kind of coming into vogue. And PW had really felt like they wanted their own children's book blog. And she approached me and said, I think you'd be great for this. And I was like, yes, great. That sounds amazing. And so I originated that Shelf Talker blog for Publishers Weekly.
Yeah, Shelf Talker. That's a big deal. I mean, I didn't really get into the industry until around 2011 was when I started writing. 2012, I started going to SCBWI stuff. And I think after that, at some point within the first year or two, I subscribed to the PW mailing, the daily email blast.
Yeah.
And that comes out at lunch. Some people call it the lunch blast. I don't know if there's different versions of it, but it's I don't know. I've heard it called anyway. But that was always like a big feature of that. And if you are, you know, interested in writing for kids, the Shelf Talker is always about bookstores and often about kids stuff. I don't know, maybe it's not always, but I feel like it is a lot.
Yeah.
It definitely has a bent to that. And so a lot of times I'd be like, okay, whatever, John Grisham, this, some lawsuit here about Google, blah, blah, blah. But then you get to Shelf Talker. And so that was like the one link I'd click on almost every day. Now I think you had gone by the time that I had actually started paying attention to it, but like it was a thing. And there's now a rotating cast of people that do it constantly, but it's like it's kind of its own entity now that I don't know that you started. Exciting. So that's impressive.
Yeah, well, really thank you. And so when I was there, I was the only one doing it, and
hey Angela,
that
Angela Dieterleasy says hi.
Hey, Ange. I'm not the best blogger in the standpoint that I am thoughtful and I want everything to be a little crafted, and like it was just enormously time consuming. It was a little bit like having my own column that I would write on a regular basis. So Josie and Elizabeth joined me from the Flying Pig to contribute pieces to the blog before I left as well. And that was enormously helpful because I said to Diane, I can't keep doing this.
I think it was the two of them alone when I started. Like that's what I remember. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, some guy came back who is he in Maine? I don't know everybody's names. Yeah, so like maybe he had done it before, but he came back. And then there's a whole bunch of other people that kind of are, I guess, regular contributors now. But so then you eventually went.
A lot of work for one person to do. And the advantage of having a lot of people involved is that you get the perspectives of what's happening in different stores or different issues people are having, questions that they want to raise with publishers. So there's a definite advantage.
But mostly New England, because that's, the best bookstores are in New England.
Certainly the ones I know best are there. I get to go with Gareth as we're traveling to independent bookstores everywhere, but I don't know them as well as I know the sort of New England cadre because they were my colleagues for so long.
Sure. So you eventually moved to the DC area and started working for First Book. Was that directly from Wellesley Books?
Nope. There's one more step in there. So by the time I left Wellesley, we were 50% of our unit sales were children's books, which was huge. I had grown the business to a very significant point. We were
it's awesome. I don't know if anyone's ever been. I don't know if anyone who's watching this has been to Wellesley Books, a great bookstore. They have a huge kids section in the back. I mean, it's much easier to park in the back. And so you walk in through the kids section and you might even not even know that they have it downstairs with used, but that's where a lot of the events are. And they have great attendance at all of the, whatever, I've done different story times in different ways. And they always have great attendance. And I think that a lot of it was attributed to you, and then there was an Allison that followed you. Yep. And then that Allison is now doing other things, and Jane is now there. But
we met at one point very early on, and she's like, "Oh, you're the old Allison." She's like, "When I came, everyone just kept calling me the new Allison," and I think it just got a little old. It's a little bit hard when you follow someone and you have the same name as them, and there's some confusion there. So
I guess that would make you now the old Allison.
Yeah, I guess
she's the old Allison.
I'm the very old Allison.
Very old, yeah. But so where did you go before First Book?
So I went to Scholastic Book Clubs. So Gareth and I picked up and we moved to New York. I had at that point, I still loved being in the bookstore every day, but I really wanted to sort of think about how can I take what I do on the sort of immediate, teacher to teacher or like bookseller to teacher level and bookseller to family level and try to replicate that on a national level. Like what can we do to try to influence books that are going to schools everywhere? And Scholastic Book Clubs actually reached out to me. They found me through the blog and said, we really want someone with your sensibility, and you seem to, you work really well with teachers and you understand what teachers are looking for. And so we moved to New York and I was there for 3 years. And then Erica Pearl, my dear friend Erica, who's an author, was at First Book, had been there for a number of years. And she was like, "Hi, I need you down here in DC." First Book had been expanding its marketplace, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit. And they had not had a dedicated children's book buyer on staff. And she and her team had been doing a great job of trying to build it up. They really needed someone who could sort of craft it, curate it, and bring to it all the things that it didn't already have, who also knew the way buying usually works in the cadence to buying front lists and things like that.
Yeah,
So I did not want to move to DC. I did not want to pick up and move again. We'd just done it 3 years before. But I went to interview at First Book, and I was just immediately, I'm going to get emotional, but the mission of what First Book does was what I'd always wanted to be doing. And it was pretty much like a done deal for me. And Gareth, bless his heart, my wonderful husband, was happy to do it again and move with me again to DC. He is a graphic novelist, and so he is highly portable.
Do you happen to have any of his amazing books that you could hold up or anything?
We didn't plan well. I hear him on the stairs behind me. Do you have? Here's Gareth.
Hey, he's watching on. I saw him log in. Hey, Gareth, how's it going? My claim to fame is that one time I was at dinner with you guys and a bunch of authors at Nerd Camp, and he drew my elbow as a part of, like, it was his. I was sitting next to him, but my elbow was in his view, so I have a picture of the picture. I took a picture of his picture that he drew of my elbow, and a bunch of other people, but yeah.
Yeah, very famous elbow you have.
Yeah, so, but he did it well, you know, he got the hairs and everything. It's
great.
But so, yeah, before we start too far, oh yes, the Iliad, awesome. We have, I think I got the Odyssey from you guys at was NCTE this past year because my daughter had read it in school, and but we're moving, and so we packed it. But yeah. Okay, Gareth, you can go.
Wait, that's exciting. Where are you moving to?
Just a couple towns over, from Concord to Weston.
Okay.
So yeah.
I know both of those towns well. They were in my book.
Yeah. So we are right near the Concord Bookshop now, which is where, you know, I frequent under normal circumstances, but now we'll be equidistant, basically, strangely enough, from Wellesley Books and Concord and Belmont Books. So like it's kind of like a triangle of those three where we'll be living. So they're all going to be about 15 to 20 minutes away. Wellesley's the part, I don't think of Wellesley and Weston's near each other, but they are. So
they're super close.
Anyway, enough about me and enough about Gareth. But his books are awesome. They're great. I'll put a picture up.
They are awesome.
Fantastic artist and author. But you mentioned Erica.
Yes.
Erica Pearl. So I think she used to live in Vermont, and I was a big fan of her book Dottie. And when I looked her up, which is illustrated by Julia Dinos, and when I looked her up, I was like, oh, that's so cool. She's in Vermont. Maybe I'll meet her sometime. But this was like, kind of right when I started getting into writing, and she moved pretty soon to DC after the DC area to do the First Book thing after that. But so I knew
that all in Boston at the same, because then she was in Boston when you were in Boston too, right?
I've been in Boston. Well, I grew up in the area, and I went to college at UMass in Western Mass, but then I went to the DC area actually for about 10 years, from 2001 to 2010, and then I came back here in 2010.
Okay.
So yes, we kind of flip-flopped.
So we sort of just missed each other. Yeah. That's around the time that Gareth and I moved to New York. And Erica, that's true. Erica had been in Boston, but then she'd already gone to DC. Because that's how I got to know her. She was a local author when I was working in Boston.
So she has some great books. We loved Dottie. That's one of her, that's from like 2009 or something, I would say. But really cool, very sweet, and
vintage, early Erica Pearl.
Early vintage. Yes. Vintage Pearl. But yeah, so anyway, definitely check out her books too. But so now you're in DC. Tell me about First Book. It's 20 minutes into the conversation, but I want to know everything about it. I've read bits and pieces, and you know, I can go to the website and see like what the official blurb is, but tell me what you do. You have an education education background, a degree in education, and so I want to know more. Tell me more.
So first of all, I'm going to say, because I know we're not going to talk for 2 hours here, that I contribute weekly book reviews to Grace Lynn and Alvina Ling have a fantastic podcast they do together called Book Friends Forever, and I contribute weekly reviews to that. And they did an interview with me a couple months ago that they wound up keeping all of. So there's actually 2 hours of me talking about what I do and what First Book does.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah.
How about like
anything
a
of
5-minute
particular interest to you, and you're like, I need more of that. You can go. It's episodes. Wait, I wrote it down. Episodes 61 and 62. Which was right after the quarantine started. We had a very long conversation about the work First Book was doing. So anyway, just to tease to that, if you need more, we don't have to solve all of the things here.
It's a really good podcast too. I didn't listen to that one. I listened to it, I think around when it started, and it was kind of just like about the two of them and their friendship and how she's an editor and a lot of their background stuff. But
it's
Gracelyn has done a lot of different
topic that they cover, and they sometimes have guests, but they really are focused on, talking about issues in the industry and how they're affecting them personally and the choices that they make and the work they do as an author and illustrator. And it's just, they have a really wonderful relationship and a very, I don't know, they're so comfortable talking about a wide range of topics. And it's sort of just, a lot of people comment, I see it in the reviews that they posted, like, it's just kind of like hanging out with friends to be listening to their podcast. So it's great. They do a great job.
Well, they've known each other since they were kids.
Yes.
Right. So it makes sense, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So check out their podcast too, especially episodes 61 and 62. But can you give me the 5-minute version?
Okay. So First Book is a nonprofit that is focused on creating equity in education. And we do that principally by providing resources to educators who are serving families in need. And educator is a term that is sort of a blanket term that can mean classroom teachers, or it can mean program leaders. We have members, 475,000 registered members all over the country. A lot of them are teachers in Title I schools, but there are also a lot of them in out-of-school spaces. That can be anything from, sort of a Head Start program for incarcerated youth. We have a lot of hospital clinics. Anyone who has a touch point with families that are living below the poverty line in a high percentage. They can register with us for free, and then we have a range of different resources available to them. What we were originally known for, and what our original sort of First Books, how we got our start, was that we would take in donated inventory from children's book publishers and make that available for free to our members, and we still continue to do that. We have an area on our site called the Book Bank, and publishers donate cartons of books to that, and our members go on and they can see what's been added new, and they pay only for the cost of shipping for those books to be shipped to them. And we often also have corporate partners who will underwrite that shipping, so often there are chances for those educators to get those cartons completely free. And on that site, which is called the First Book Marketplace, we also have a very wide range of purchased content. And so that is my job, is selecting the books that go into those purchased book buckets, which is categories all over the site. I work with an amazing team of very dedicated book nerds. They're awesome. All of us have classroom or library direct experience with kids, and we are the type of people who are always talking about the latest sort of dialogue conversation that's happening in the children's book world, paying attention to what's happening on Twitter, very invested in conversations around diversity, inclusion, own voices, and are thinking all the time about the kids we're serving and how are the books that we're purchasing dovetailing with their needs, and what is unique about that network, and who's in what circumstances might a teacher or a social worker or anyone find a book particularly valuable. So we do a lot of, as we're reading books, just sort of talking through, well, this is a perfect book that's sort of a take-home book, like that you would send home with kids, because a lot of our members are getting books to send home with their kids. A lot of them do not have any books in the home. And then also books where a book maybe requires a little more adult intervention or sort of explanation, so it's a better classroom suited book. But what are the books that we think educators are really going to sink their teeth into and find uses for in the classroom? And then we also think a lot about rereadability. Our members are buying books from us at steep discounts. A lot of our books, they're typically between 50 and 65% off retail, the ones I'm buying brand new from our publishing partners. And so that means a lot of the paperbacks are around the like $3, $3.50 sort of mark. And the hardcovers are in the $6 and $7 range, which is, for a lot of us, seems very cheap. But that adds up really fast, especially if you're a classroom teacher spending your own pocket money, which a huge number of our members are. They are doing whatever they can to get resources to their kids, and we are very cautious about every dollar they spend. I don't want you to get a book that you're going to read once and be like, well, that was kind of fun. Like, I want it to ideally be a book you're really going to enjoy. Yeah. And then we also just think all the time about kids, like, is this going to be engaging to the reader? We have sort of a list of questions we're always asking ourselves as we read. And yeah, it's a challenging puzzle. We go through publisher lists every season, and I don't know if you guys know how much stuff is being published, but it is a lot. It is a lot.
I do have a sense, but yeah, no, realistically, how many kids book? I mean, doesn't this Children's Book Council like put? Is it 5,000 books a year? Or is that just picture books? Like, I don't even know. Like,
Yeah, so I have not found a good source for like the actual total
yeah,
number, because there's so many different kinds of publishing. So there's like sort
right,
of educational publishers who are creating content over here.
right.
Grade book publishers. Children's Book Council has a huge number of members, but not every publisher is a member of the CBC. And so their numbers are a big piece of it, but not everything. The CCBC is doing all of their incredible data around diversity, and they're cataloging that way, but they are not getting all the submissions. So I have not found one number that is everything, but I will tell you that there are a couple of major publishers who will send like 60 printed F&Gs a season of picture books. So like that's one publisher, 60 picture books from
It's 200 a year, basically.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
No, because there's 4 seasons a year.
Oh, there's
So
4.
they won't do that many every season necessarily, but there's,
Wait,
there's a lot.
What publishers have 4 seasons?
A lot. Most publishers have 3 or 4 catalogs a year.
Yeah, I feel like there's never really a summer season though.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
All right.
They're definitely
but then
catalog for summer for most.
Then when you think about it, there are all those other like kind of they're trade, maybe they're trade books, but maybe they're not. They're like the educational books and stuff like that that you really only would see in school. Yeah, there's so many different things.
I mean, a lot of educational publishers publish sort of more stuff that you'd buy in a large set directly for your school, but they also then do publish some really high quality one-off trade books too. So keeping abreast of all of that and then figuring out, okay, this is great. I love all 200 of these books. Now, how many can I actually buy within my budget? And what holes are they filling on our site? And what do I have to get rid of to be sure that I can continue to then bring new things in? And so it's a constant dance as a buyer. And it's also, you're not buying for yourself. I remember very early on having a sales rep talk about going to a store and this buyer who would agonize over every title in the catalog. And it just hurt me because I thought that is a hard job for this person. If you don't have a pretty quick instinct for that, a kid is going to love that and a teacher's going to use it in this way and then be able to move on. Like you're just going to take forever to go through every catalog. And it just sounded painful. It sounded painful to me.
Yeah.
That being said, it is painful having to choose. Be mindful of what you're supporting when you do that. You know, like again, I am very committed to diversifying the publishing industry. It is a critical problem in this country. We have got to solve. We have to represent all of our kids in books. We also have to represent potential for them to work in this industry. I think part of the reason we have the problem we have is because if you grew up with only books that show white kids in them, you wouldn't necessarily know, if you're a kid of color, that is career potential for you. And I think one of the ways we diversify the industry is by publishing more diverse books so that kids see themselves and they see career possibilities for themselves.
And own voices too. I mean, I have a couple books that feature characters of color, but and they've been illustrated by people of color, but again, it's still not the same. So I think that
experiences written by people from within those communities for sure.
Right. And with picture books, a character named George, you know, could be anybody, but I think it still matters that that children can see themselves both in the characters in the books, but also the name behind the author and the illustrator of those books. Yeah. And I know you put a lot of emphasis into that. Is there, I mean, I don't really have any question. That's a great thing to be doing, but is there anything that you want to discuss about that? And I mean, I know why it's important. I think you've sort of already explained, but if there's anything else you wanted to add.
I wish what I should have done is print it out. I have this quote. I was just thinking about what I've been thinking about lately. I mean, all I can think about is we just need these books and they need to be there now. And there's amazing stuff coming out. And we also need to trumpet and celebrate the books that are being created by authors of color, by, you know, that are own voices titles. And own voices also, to be clear, does not necessarily mean by a person of color. It could be someone from within a disability community or someone LGBTQ writing about their particular experience within that community. But there's a quote that, you know, we all talk about windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, citing the amazing Rudine Sims Bishop and her critically important research that informs a lot of the work that a lot of us do now. But there's a quote from her that I wish I had memorized, but it is basically the danger of only seeing books about one population. And if you read it, like basically it creates a dangerous ethnocentrism. And that is exactly what we have happening right now. And I see it all the time in the white supremacist sort of leanings. And I just think that if we had raised generations of kids to be more responsive and see, at least on the page, kids who are different from them, then we might be in a very different place from where we are right now. And so I feel like it's not just, we focus a lot on the mirrors piece, and I feel like the windows piece is just as important for white kids to be reading about kids from other cultures and other communities and having other experiences from their own.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, as I'm not an educator, but as a parent, that's something that I'm aware of. And I've, my son loved Oliver and Telgemeier's books, and in some houses that might have been given a strange, but here it's normal, and it should be normal. But I think it's one of those things that not just teachers, but parents need to be aware of this too, and encourage this too. So how
Absolutely.
do you?
And I think we should also be seeking out books by people from historically underrepresented communities in publishing, and putting money behind those books and buying those books, because for a long time the argument was that, well, the market doesn't exist, and it's just not true. It was never really true. It was a matter of aggregating and finding that market. But now we know for sure that market is out there. In First Book, we see it all the time. Our sales of diverse books are a massive percentage of what we do. I mean, I couldn't do my job without them. It also wouldn't be right to do my job without them. But we all have to be critical and thinking very thoughtfully about being sure we're supporting the continued creation of those books with our dollars, because at the end of the day, that is what talks to some percentage. I hate to say, I don't want to paint the brush that I think that most of children's publishing is ruled by money, because I actually don't really feel like that's true. At least that's why you got into this work, right, Josh? You're in it for the money because it pays so well.
No, more the fame.
The fame. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That part, yeah.
But well, I always think it's interesting that people would say that well, no one's going to buy the books. But if you look at, I know bestseller lists are not always the best metric, because they really only show like the top, and you may want to look at like the top 100 books or the top 500 books, and you're only seeing the top 10 or whatever. But if you look at the top 10 best-selling YA books, most of them are by people of color, and
right now
and for the last few years, but for a long time. And if you look at
the picture book list has not been as diverse, so just to say
but
that.
But then as you get to middle grade, it's like half, it's a little bit, and then once you get to picture books, it's like pretty much just all white men. And I think that the interesting thing about that is that you think about who is spending the money, who is actually choosing the books. People who buy young adult books are the actual readers, whether they're adults reading young adults or their kids reading young adult. They're selecting their own books. And middle grade is kind of, a little bit of both, a little bit the parent and a little bit the kids. And that's why it's like a little, but who's buying the picture books? It's basically the parents. Now, we're talking trade here. We're not talking about education as much, but it's basically the parents, and that's when you get all the white men. Now, stores could do a better job of featuring, and many are, of featuring the books in the right way.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's interesting, and obviously I'm a white man and I write picture books and I want people to buy my books, but it's a more systemic thing than me as one person. But I do find it, I think that's proof that whoever makes that statement that says, oh, those books won't sell, it's complete BS. Because just look at the bestseller lists. When people are choosing what to buy with themselves, the young adults, they buy their own books. They don't care. They just want good books. And middle grade, anyway, you get the point. I don't have to repeat myself. But
no. So you're saying the right thing. So yeah.
But yeah, so you're doing great work with First Book. I know you wanted to, and I always ask everybody, but if you have books that you wanted to recommend.
Yeah, so it was really funny when you were like, do you have books you want to recommend? And I was like, do I have books I want to
Well, can we cap it at like 20? I don't know how much time you have.
So many, Josh. I have so many.
So I see a lot behind you already.
We have the same favorite picture book this year.
Okay.
We have the same favorite picture book. Your Name is a Song.
Yeah, I love it.
My favorite picture book of the year. So if anyone hasn't watched it, watch Josh's interview or conversation last week with Jamila Tompkins Bigelow, because it's great. This is her new picture book illustrated by Luisa Uribe, and I do not have a physical copy because I read it in digital.
Oh, I do.
I
can hold it up.
Oh, you do? I'm so jealous. I need to get mine ASAP. Hi, friends.
I'm still here.
I see Shanisha. Make sure you order this book because it's the best. It will be available on the First Book Marketplace very soon. Yes,
it's great.
This book is stunning. I love the art. I love the text. I love the story. The day I read it,
the back matter.
The back matter is fantastic. It is about a girl who is very frustrated with the fact that no one pronounces her name correctly, including her classroom teacher. The day I read it for the first time, I worked very late, which I'm going to say I do a lot. And I wound up actually taking an Uber or Lyft home from the nearest metro station. And I got in the car and I do what I do every time, which is say to the driver, I greet them, I say hello, and I say their name, and then I ask if I pronounced it correctly, because I don't always know. And in some cases, I may have gotten it wrong and I don't want to offend anyone. And so the driver said, oh, yes, nobody ever asked me that. And so then I said, oh, I actually read this book today that is about that issue. And then we had this amazing conversation about that picture book and about naming. And it was like the highlight of my week. And it was the perfect example, too, of how picture books are for all ages. This book is just a gem.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
So yeah, that is one of my favorites. I have been reading a lot of graphic novels recently.
My researcher noticed that you've been doing a lot of graphic novels. It's my wife, but yeah, she had a lot of trouble digging stuff up about you. Your social media is basically all professional and book related.
I know.
I have one thing, but I'll get to it later.
I've been really bad. I said this too, and Grace is always encouraging. Grace wants me to have my own podcast, which I theoretically would enjoy, but
you can do it after you get home from work late.
Yeah, exactly. That's the challenge. I work a lot, and so I'm always struggling with the I can either do the work or I can talk about the work, and finding time to do both is challenging. When I was at Scholastic, I actually did 250 item detail videos of me book talking books. And when I was at First Book, I was very well known for my super engaging book talks that I did for teachers, and it's part of my job I miss the most. So I keep hoping I'm going to find a way to build that into what I do at First Book. But at any rate, so yeah, I apologize that she couldn't find a whole lot of me talking about books, which is really ostensibly what all my social media should be, because I read so many, just the picture books alone this season. But I haven't been good about it, so I'm just gonna hold up a couple. Okay, so if you're working with younger kids, Fox and Rabbit, like chapter book level readers, delightful new chapter book series, graphic novel series. I'm just gonna hold up an interior page so you can see.
Cool.
Who
wrote it?
Sorry, that is by Beth Ferry, Ferry, and illustrated by Gurgly Dudas. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, and I just said that I don't like to do that, but anyway.
Beth Ferry's having a great year. I mean, she's had a lot of great years, but Swashby in the Sea, I haven't actually read it yet, but it's got a lot of great.
Yeah. And that's illustrated by Juana Martinez Neal, who's one of my favorites. Also, PB&J, Stuck Together, written by Brian Smitty Smith, is coming out in September. And this is part of Harper's new line of comics for young kids, Harper Alley. And it is really, really entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Also, Max Meow. If you're looking for what to read next, if you have Dogman fans, Max Meow, Cat Crusader by John Gallagher. It's his first graphic novel. Super, super fun. Ooh, sorry, that was loud. Middle grade. Measuring Up by Lily Lamont and Anne Zhu is new graphic novel that is going to be great for your Raina Telgemeier fans and fans of Stargazing by Jen Wang. This is a winner. I also loved Witches of Brooklyn, which is from that one's also from Harper Alley. Witches of Brooklyn is from the new Random House Kids graphics line. Shout out to Gina Gagliano, who is doing some amazing things. I loved this book. It is a joy. And also on her list is The Magic Fish. This is a fantastic YA graphic novel about a kid in a Vietnamese family who is really unsure how to come out to his parents, in part because he does not know the word gay in Vietnamese. But it is this incredibly beautiful, poignant interweaving of his contemporary experiences navigating that space with fairy tales. And it's just beautiful. And it's not like anything else I've read, which also made it a gem.
Cool.
Those are just a handful. I've read 13 in the last couple months. I've been having a hard time reading novels right now.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's partly because I've been at home reading so many picture books without my team taking some and reading some as well. We've been doing some online sharing, but it's been much more challenging. And I think at the end of the day, I'm like, I just can't sit and read a sustained thing without pictures. I have been doing it, but it's been slow. So Gareth and I read together. We are reading Daniel Nayeri's memoir, Everything Sad is Untrue. It is great. So he's been reading that to me at bedtime. Daniel's picture on the back. This is the arc. The finished book doesn't look quite the same.
You read out loud to each other, you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my wife and I used to do that when we were dating. We read a lot of books to each other out loud, so that's fun.
Yeah, it helps me sort of like decompress at the end of the day, and if I read aloud to him, I'll just keep reading. So it works best if he reads to me. If I read to myself in bed, I will just keep reading. If
I read to my wife, she falls asleep. So sometimes we intentionally do that. I'm like, yes. Do you want me to read to you? Like, it's, the sultry tone of my voice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm kidding. But yeah, so she often I'll read to her, like, I don't know, at one point, because I don't read on my phone really, but we wanted it to be dark. And so I downloaded like whatever was free on the, like, intellectual property. It was like Sherlock Holmes. So I ended up reading a bunch of Sherlock Holmes a few years ago, like, and to put her to sleep, and she would never hear the end of the mystery. And so then I'd have to like explain it the next day. But yeah, now I have a good light. Yeah. Gareth
will also fall asleep sometimes if I read aloud to him, whereas it will wake me up. But he famously read aloud Sherlock Holmes to me and got really annoyed because I would solve the mystery really early on. And he was like, what? And there was one famous time where he literally said the title to me, and I was like, is this going to be and then I revealed the whole thing, and he was like, oh my God.
Is it because you're good at solving mysteries or spoiling things, or you're just read them all before?
Spoilers. No, I hadn't read them before. I don't know. I think I've just read enough mysteries over the years, mostly middle grade and YA, honestly, that I just saw what was coming. Each time I was able to, it wasn't every time, but in most cases I could.
Yeah. I mean, some of them just shift plots. Like there's the one where there's like I don't know if there's like a diamond inside the goose's stomach or something like that. And like, you wouldn't have guessed that it was about diamonds. Like if someone killed stole a goose.
All right. Yeah. Someone is asking for picture book recommendations.
Yes, Corey.
Charles Bridge has a whole line of math related picture books that's coming out. They're super diverse and they're really well done. And they include these great board books that Grace did that I love. Grace Lynn, sorry. I'm just using shorthand here. The Animals When That Sleep is one, and Leah and Louise, Who Has More, is another. Those are, I think they're all coming, I want to say October and maybe September, but they're really well done, and they incorporate math into the story in a way that makes them not feel like math-heavy, math-centric books.
So speaking of Charles Bridge, they are in Watertown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess a few years ago, maybe it was for our friends Carter and Maya's wedding, I don't know, but you did mention that in a span of 5 days, you went to a restaurant called Sofra 4 times, which is in Watertown. And it's actually one of my wife and her best friends, they go there all the time. She recognized it from the picture before she even saw it. But so I don't know, what do you like for Sofra? It's a Mediterranean restaurant, but what have you, what was your favorite dish there? What did you like to get so much?
Sofra,
and was it around when you lived around here and you loved it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we lived in Watertown. We lived walking distance from Sofra. Thankfully, not for that long. It came in not that long before we left. Really.
But it's pretty healthy stuff. I mean, it's like
a lot of,
yeah.
It is, but it's just really good. Like everything. Okay. I would have. There are plenty of dessert items there that I would have indulged in a little bit too often too.
Okay.
But they have basically all the mezze, all the like sides that you can get, and you get
the muhammara is the best one that we really.
The muhammara is amazing,
yeah.
And the kibbeh, we love their kibbeh, and we love the carrot. There's one that's carrot salad, sort of. I don't know. It's magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, I've been there a few times. My wife and her friend that lives down the road, they go all the time. So.
Well, in Oleana, have you been to Oleana?
Yeah, I have.
So it's the pastry chef of Oleana, the same chef Anna Sortone who started Oleana. she is the one who runs Sofra with the pastry chef from Oleana is sort of the central person who is.
Is that like a breakfast place? I feel like I've gone there for breakfast before.
Oleana is, no, it's more lunch and dinner fare.
Yeah, maybe I went
Very
for brunch on a
scale,
Sunday or something.
but like down to earth. And anyway, like Gareth, I've had some of our best meals ever there. And their baked Alaska is out of this world, which is words I've never said about any other place. Their baked Alaska with passion fruit is like to die for.
Well, we're vegan, but yeah. So I'm pretty sure I went there one time. Vividly remember picking up someone at the airport, probably my mother-in-law. And then we met there. But okay, I saw you grab a few more picture books. So
I did. So I have these really terrible black and white printouts because I couldn't get my laptop to work with the Garrett's printer earlier. Evelyn Del Rey is moving away. This is Meg Medina's new picture book with gorgeous illustrations by Sonia Sanchez, and it is about a girl who has a best friend named Evelyn who's moving away, and it is just beautiful. It is also the Read for the Record book this year, which is a program done by nonprofit Jumpstart, where they have as many schools and classrooms and programs as possible sign up to read the book same book on the same day, and this is their pick for this year, which is exciting. At Highlights last year, I got to hear Neil Porter read this book aloud before anyone had seen it. I Talk Like a River by Jordan Scott, illustrated by Sydney Smith. Again, sorry, this is this black and white printout. This book is stunning, and you will not forget reading it. It is narrated by a kid who has a stutter, which is the author's own experience. And it is about the sort of isolation and frustration he feels with his inability to communicate effectively. And then his dad takes him down to a river at one point where they go often to sort of swim. And his dad points out that he talks like a river, that his cadence sort of has this bubbling and this movement, and it stops and it starts, and it just becomes this sort of comforting metaphor for him, because here's this beautiful thing in nature. And it's an incredibly powerful book. And Sydney Smith, his illustrations are just elevated to a whole other level. I actually can't picture it with someone else's art, which is a testament to him and how good he is. And also so young. He's so good and so young.
Yeah, Neil Porter has, I guess he's edited, but I feel like he's like, it's like a director in some ways. Like I kind of like, I love so many of the books that he's worked on over the years. Yeah. And Boats for Papa is probably my favorite picture book of all time, and he did that one. And by Jessica Bagley. But yeah. So anyway, I just I've met him, and he's super cool. Down to earth. Yeah. So anyway.
And I think that's part of the reason that his authors love working with him so much too. Is he's so thoughtful. Yeah. He's also just like a really just great person to spend time with. So yeah. I just wanted to make sure that if people don't know it, that they know about The Oldest Student, How Mary Walker Learned to Read.
Oh, I have that one too.
Yeah, this one? Yeah. It is the incredible story of a woman named Mary Walker who learned to read when she was 116 years old. She had been born enslaved and was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. And of course, as a slave, she would never have been given the opportunity to learn to read. But she did very late in her life, and she lived many years after that, which is also mind-blowing. She was let's see, 121 years old when she died. So this is the central message of this book is you're never too old to learn, and that some of us need that reminder, even when we're nowhere close to 116. And there's another book that just came out that I think is a perfect companion to it, which is actually maybe just coming out now. And I hope I'm not pronouncing this wrong, but Fauja Singh Keeps Going, The True Story of the Oldest Person to Ever Run a Marathon by Simranjeet Singh, illustrated by Baljinder Kaur. I apologize, I probably butchered those names. But this is this incredible story of a man who is still alive and running marathons. And he is not young. He was 81 when he decided to run his first marathon. And he became the first person over 100 to complete a marathon. And
that's pretty awesome.
So yeah, both of those I find inspiring, right? That is the new Kate Messner.
Oh, Kate Messner's, yeah.
Over and Under the Rainforest, illustrated by Christopher Samuel. It is beautiful, also brand new. Yeah. And what else did I put up here? Grandpa Grumps is Katrina Moore's delightful new story about a girl whose grandfather comes to stay with her. And
I interviewed her a few weeks ago too. She and I swap manuscripts sometimes. She's great. I don't think I saw Grandpa Grumps, but yeah, I've seen a lot of hers, and many of them are going to end up coming out. But that's great. Yeah, Grandpa Grumps is super cool, especially if you haven't seen your grandparents in a while, which a lot of us haven't. Maybe you could read it over a Skype or virtual video with your grandparents. So
Excellent point.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's been a great year. I mean, every year I feel that way, but this year I really do feel like there's just a lot of fantastic books coming out.
It's been harder for me, and I'm sure a lot of people like me because I can't go to the library. I mean, I was the kind of person that would go to the library and they would have, I knew exactly where the librarians put the new books and the new picture books at different libraries. I go to lots of different libraries, but so, and I would just kind of sweep everything that I hadn't read yet into my basket. And so I haven't read books like Swashby in the Sea. I haven't read books, a lot of the books, unless I buy them. And even when I go to a bookstore, which some of them are opening now, and I don't like to go out if I can avoid it. But in addition to that, I don't really want to touch books that I'm not going to buy. So I still don't really get a chance to even flip through them. Right. So it's tricky. And I could probably do a better job of making requests of my library, I guess. But that, which is more work than just whatever that happens to be out, I dump it in. But yeah, it's been a challenge to find, and I know you see them in advance and you have people that send them directly to you or to your office, but yeah, so this is going to be one of those years where I'm sure for a lot of people, it's hard to know the new stuff. And I know that some books have been bumped because of that. I know.
Right. I was going to say, you're also tapping into every author's worst fear right now. They're like, I have a book coming out. Is anyone going to find it? I'm like, yes, people will find it. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Yeah. I mean, it
is more challenging for sure. But
it's more, I mean, Your Name is a Song was bumped and originally, and then they current events made it more important than ever for a book like this to exist. And
also because people like us wouldn't shut up about it.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was like getting so much buzz that I know Asia felt like she was like, oh, maybe we should.
Yeah. And so she had 3 weeks. I mean, it was already printed and in warehouses, I assume, or, somewhere. And so, although those copies sold out right away, so they need to print more, which is probably why you don't have it in your catalog quite yet. But yeah, so anyway, I want to ask you my 5 random questions. Okay, I ask every guest 5 random questions that I pick out of a hat because I like to wear hats. And so let's see. My first question is, I'm closing my eyes. Let's see. How do you take your coffee?
How do I take my coffee? I am more of a latte fan than a standard coffee fan. I do not make coffee at my own house. But when I have coffee, I like it with cream and a little bit of sugar.
So wait, you don't make coffee at home? Have you not been drinking much lately?
No, I've had very little coffee, except we've gone a couple Saturdays to Vigilante, which is our local coffee shop that we totally love. And we've been trying to support them, and we have been going every now and again on the weekend.
Yeah. Are you more of a tea person?
Yeah.
Like hot tea, iced tea,
I actually just
not
the
need
thing
caffeine?
is I tried not to get addicted to caffeine, so I'm like, but yes, when I was at the office, in particular when it's cooler, I would drink a cup of tea at work every day.
Okay. Yeah, so
I'm a big Egyptian licorice peppermint tea drinker, which if you have not had, it sounds disgusting. I am not a licorice fan. You don't taste the licorice, it just acts as a natural sweetener to the peppermint.
Say it again, Egyptian licorice peppermint?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I mean, but like ketchup chips also sound disgusting, but they're amazing. So yeah, no, like I'm with you. I trust you on that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're just naturally caffeinated, I guess.
Apparently, yeah. This energy just comes out of me on my own.
All right. Question number 2.
Yes.
What is a movie that is objectively terrible, but you still love?
Ooh, wow. Objectively terrible that I still love. Gareth will tell you I don't watch a lot of terrible movies because they're too terrible for me. But there has to be a good one. Oh man, I wish I'd prepared for this.
I mean, like I like Dumb and Dumber and things like that. Like I like stupid comedies.
Yeah.
I saw Robin Hood Men in Tights in the theaters, but if you don't like
I've been watching New Girl lately, which is kind of dumb. I don't know. I do have mindless fun. Gareth, are you downstairs?
Yeah.
Can you think of a bad movie that I like to watch?
Not really. It's more about the TV.
This is not really. It's more about bad TV.
Bad TV. Okay. So do you like watch reality shows?
I'm gonna think of this. Move on to the next one because I'm gonna come up with something.
Okay. All right.
No, but see, they're still good. I mean, I like to watch I like animated kids movies, but they're not objectively bad either. Moana's
Yeah, but like
fantastic.
I like High School Musical and stuff, but that's
Yeah.
not bad, right? That's
Yeah,
good.
no.
Yeah. Okay. Who is your favorite character from Saved by the Bell?
Oh man.
So there was Screech
Yeah, Zach.
and
Screech.
Jesse and Zach Morris.
Yeah, Zach Morris.
And what
I
was the
remember
muscly guy's
calling
name?
Zach.
Mario Lopez? Slater.
Later.
Yeah, and Lisa
AC
Turtle.
Right?
And was it Kelly? Kelly
Kelly was
Kapowski?
the curly hair, brown hair.
Kelly Kapowski? Yeah. That was I don't know. I should have researched who was in the show first. But which one are you? Which one are you? Are you like the nerdy one? Are you the cool one? Are you the jock? Are you the principal?
Oh, I'm
like,
definitely more on the nerdy end, but not the stereotypical nerd necessarily.
not the script.
No.
You're probably like like the tall one who was in that movie.
Yes.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. She was in.
Probably.
She like went in that movie where she was with like a stripper or something later on. What was that movie called? Showgirls? I think she was in Showgirls.
Okay.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I never saw that. I was too young at the time. But okay.
Man, Josh, I'm just not prepared well. I feel like, okay, clearly I needed to watch Saved by the Bell before we had this conversation.
It's coming back though. Like Zach Morris is
Well,
now
then
the
I
mayor or
definitely need to get
something.
up to speed.
I don't know. Probably, but oh no, wait! I asked somebody that question. How did it end up back in here? Okay. Okay. Did you ever have a Cabbage Patch Kid?
I did.
Do you remember its name?
I had 3. Yes.
3?
First of all, my grandparents bought them for me because my mom was like not having it. Not interested in the craze, any of that. So first I got one. It was under the Christmas tree. And I knew what it was because, they had that unique box shape.
Yeah.
With like slanted front. Yeah. And so she was a preemie and her name was Ginny Diandra.
Okay.
Yeah. Ginny Diandra. And then
I'm going to find a
we had
picture.
another girl who had a lot of brown hair and her name was Claudia Allison. Coincidence?
How do you remember all that?
Oh, I don't know. I played with them a lot, I think is the thing. And then I had a boy named Luther Darrell.
Oh, wait. This is the first time I've ever hit close to an hour. I'm getting a countdown that I only have 1 minute and 45 seconds remaining.
Okay.
So question number 5 is, what is your favorite type of nut butter?
I'm a classic peanut butter fan.
Classic? Do you like crunchy or smooth?
It depends on what it is being used on or in.
Okay.
But I would say I tend towards smooth in general. It doesn't get stuck in my teeth.
All right.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any like flavored ones, like chocolate, peanut butter, or you just like you're not a Nutella fan?
I'm kind of a purist. If I'm gonna mix it with stuff, I would rather put it with my own thing that I want to sort of mix.
Okay.
Get the right.
That makes sense. Yeah. We've had a lot of different ones. Being vegan, there's just like
So what's your favorite?
It depends. I like a lot of them. It depends.
Yeah.
I don't love sesame seed butter, but
that one's drier, I find.
Yeah, and I try to get the ones that don't have the palm oil because cutting down palm trees is bad, I hear. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
The first guest that hit the hour mark that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, people who know me are gonna be like, yeah, not surprising.
Well, I'm not surprised. I just didn't know it existed.
And my work is a lot to talk about, and books are a lot to talk about. So you put them all together, it's a lot.
All right, so First Book, if people want to go learn about First Book, become a member, go to firstbook.org.
Firstbook.org or firstbookmarketplace.org if you want to check out our online store and register, sign up with us if you're a teacher in a Title I school or if the program you work for serves a population 70% or more low income.
Awesome. Well, that's 10 seconds left, so I'm going to say goodbye and thank you so much. And
bye.
Bye, Gareth. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching.
Bye.